Yeah, that was great advice.
Hi, I'm Linda Newman. I'm West Coast Editor of Billboard. Thank you very, very much for being here. I'm going to introduce our panel. I'm going to start to my immediate left. Rainey Shakni is an American music composer, producer based in Los Angeles. He has written and produced songs for Georgia Moroder, Britney Spears, Foxes, Matthew Comer, Leona Lewis, and others. His score and songwriting collaborations have appeared in more than 30 films and 100 TV shows, including current series Kevin Can Wait and Queen of the South. Rainey was composer of the FX hit series Anger Management, which he has an amazing story about, starring Charlie Sheen, the film The To-Do List, and Fame, where his remake of the title song reached Billboard's Hot 100. Additionally, his current video game credits include Dragon Age Inquisition and The Sims 4. Please welcome Rainey Shakni. Anthony Improgo is a drummer, songwriter, and graphic designer who has toured the world as a member of various pop and rock bands and has his songs featured in TV shows, films, and commercials worldwide. Formerly a member of Metro Station, Anthony has been the drummer and co-songwriter for the band Brave Light since 2010. He shared stages with artists such as Imagine Dragons, AWOL Nation, Ex-Ambassadors, and Fits and the Tantrums. Songs he's co-written have been featured in the Netflix drama 13 Reasons Why, as well as TV promo spots for the Super Bowl, Olympics, Grammys, and Oscars, and EA Sports' popular FIFA game. He previously worked for Live Nation as a senior graphic web designer, where he designed the company's logo. So you're saying it's work whenever you see the Live Nation logo. Please welcome in. On my far left, Seth Keller is a 20-year veteran of the music industry. He's an artist manager and consultant who has worked with both famous and developing artists, Grammy and Tony-nominated songwriters and musicians across several genres, including pop, rock, jazz, and R&B. Seth is the owner of SKM Artists and a partner in airplay monitoring company Radio Wave and Groove Jazz Music, the largest monitored contemporary jazz airplay charts. Please join Seth. Please welcome me and join Seth. I want to start just by kind of talking about how, for Rainey and Anthony, how you decided to be musicians. It's a risky career, and it's a very unstable career. So what made you decide to do that, and at what point did you realize you'd made the right decision? You go.
Well, the right decision part is never. For me, I was raised in a musical family. My family is the Beach Boys, and Brian Wilson is our cousin. And my mom sang background for everybody. So growing up out there, I was raised in a very musical family. We'd have Steppenwolf on the breakfast table, and it'd be just a bizarre upbringing, really. And so my dad was a very staunch businessman who married this musician and got kind of thrusted into this world. So he was always like, do not at all costs ever go into the music business, and actually made me get a degree in psychology. And so I was kind of moonlighting on my degree and playing in punk rock bands in Los Angeles. And it was always my love and passion to play in those projects. When it actually happened for me, I was doing this avant-garde performance art thing in Hollywood where I was scoring all of my friends' really gritty films. They went to NYU and USC, and I would do live scores of their 20-minute films in Los Angeles. And I got discovered, actually really discovered.
I want to back up. Did you train to learn how to score? Like, did you go to music school, or you totally self-taught?
I did go I had 12 years of classical lessons, and so I'd always watch, film was always my very favorite. At the recitals in piano, I'd be taught Brahms and Chopin, but I really do like John Carpenter's Halloween at the recital and mess with the teacher, and it was always a shock to everybody who was watching. So I always loved film score forever, and just did it on my own basically, and found their films and started making scores to them as weird and as trippy as possible, the craziest sounds I could find, and the weirdest melodies I could find. And then people from Steven Soderbergh's camp came one night and saw me, and then they just ended up putting a bunch of music in their films. And the first film I got was a girlfriend I had said, "Why don't you just call yourself a composer?" And I said, "Okay, I'll call myself a composer." And we were in Austin, Texas, and I ended up meeting all of like Richard Linklater and all of these people. And I said I was a composer, and the first person I introduced myself to said, "We're looking for a composer. Will you come on and try out for this film?" And I ended up doing this very bizarre film called Shafted. It was about a guy who checks into a mental institution and thinks he's Shaft. And so I scored all of this funk music, and I loved it. And that was the moment that I knew, when I was scoring for 12 hours and it felt like 1 minute. And I knew that.
I want to say it does not normally go that smoothly for most people. There's usually a little bit more sweat equity, involved. Anthony, so what was kind of your story? Did you grow up in a musical family, or how did you
Not at all.
decide this is what you wanted to do?
So I kind of, would go back and forth with music and design. I went to Academy of Art in San Francisco, but I was always playing drums at night in various bands. My first internship was at Bill Graham Presents in San Francisco.
Wow.
And it was really cool because all the original Fillmore posters were still there. It's like, oh, I want to be a rock star. And so when Bill Graham got bought by SFX, and then SFX went into Clear Channel and then Live Nation, I had a chance to move to LA. And at night I would just play my drums and everything like that, doing the graphic design thing in the daytime. And then I was auditioning for different bands, and one of those bands was this band called Metro Station. Turns out that the brother was Miley Cyrus's sister brother. Anyway, long story short, playing in indie bands, not big, and then that was kind of my break, because we had a hit song, and then world tours for 3 years, and I quit my day job. But I was concurrently doing design and music, and I guess it was a good kind of learning ground for me, because with how streaming and just Instagram, social media has changed now, to be an artist you have to be 360, so you have to do everything. So yeah.
I'm going to get back to touring with Metro Station in a minute, but Seth, I just wanted, for people who may not be musicians but want to figure out another way to be in the industry, how did you end up being a manager and a consultant?
Moved to LA like a lot of people to get into the entertainment business, and because I had a journalism background, I got a job at a PR company when I was like 23, and it was mostly music. And I was there for about a year, worked with some great people, but a few months in realized that if I was going to be a publicist the rest of my life, I'd probably hang myself. So I decided I needed to do something else, and I just started working with some local bands, and I said, I don't really know what I'm doing, I need to get a job kind of doing that. So my boss at the PR company was like, I know a manager is looking for an assistant, maybe you should call him. So I did, and I got a job, and that's kind of how it started.
So Rainey, I want to go back to you, and can you just kind of explain, it doesn't really usually work where you're just at a party in Austin, Texas, and you say you're a composer, and next thing you know you're scoring, check. Can you talk about how you get jobs? You have an agent. Like most of the composers, you don't have a manager. So you have an agent at ICM. Can you talk about the process of, you're doing 2 series right now. How does that work? And how do you juggle 2 series?
So the typical landscape for me as a composer, my agent will set general meetings, and I'll go all over town and meet almost every producer, writer, new production company, and just go have these somewhat tedious general meetings. Sometimes they're a connection, but most of the times they're not. And what will usually happen is there'll be some sort of person that I've worked with. It's basically about building a network. I'll do one show, a very small show. Let's say it's a free film that I'm even doing as a gratis for somebody, and then they disband. They all go into different shows, and they'll all stagger. So the editor from this show will go be a recommender to me to another production company. The editor will go be a recommender for another one, the co-producer. And so I built leads, and then I go follow those people more so than what my agent does, and say, hey, what are you working on? What's going on with you? And like, I found a new director, and so I'm building a social network basically of all of these people who are going into new productions, and it exponentially builds and builds and builds. And I have a technique where I will, every 5 weeks, I will follow up. My agent told me very early on, he said, when it's in the calendar month, you're annoying, but when it's just outside, you're being proactive. That's what he told me, so I've had that for a decade. So I will always give a 5-week follow-up to everybody. And some of those leads convert after over 2 years. About 2 years of just, hey, how's it going? Just checking in. Nothing this month. Hopefully, something soon.
Wait, so you check every 5 weeks?
Every 5
For
weeks.
2 years?
For 2 years, yeah. And I've converted a job that way. Several. More than 2 years. And they'll be like, dude, it's crazy, the timing. I can't believe you checked in now. We have something for you. As if it's serendipitous, but it's so
If they only knew, like if they were on the
I
calendar.
didn't even realize how much I followed up, for real.
I want you to talk about your anger management story, because you just talked about how important it is for you to really make the use of your social network.
Sure.
And I think how you got the anger management composing gig is just a classic case of that.
Sure. So I think there was this book Warren Beatty wrote. He was talking about the importance of just being out in the world as much of a factor as any. And so I do believe that, to go try to find the ecosystems that I really want to be in, where the artists are and where the people are. So I go to a lot of art galleries because I found that that's where really cool people were that were like-minded and doing this thing. So this one in particular called the Halford Gallery, I was going to repeatedly. And I started telling him that I was doing music and I played these avant-garde shows. And I asked him if I could do an installation, a music installation for one of his shows. And I pitched this idea. I said, I'll bring a string quartet in. I'll have the girls dress like the art, and we'll play heavy metal songs with an instrumentation like a string quartet. And he loved the idea. And so I kept doing this. And one of the people who worked in the gallery told me, she's like, do you know who you're working for? This is actually one of the biggest TV producers in Hollywood. He created the Drew Carey show, he created, Roseanne, he worked on Family Ties. He's been doing it for years and years, and he's got a new show with Charlie Sheen called Anger Management. You might want to ask if you want to do it. And so what I did was I took the quartet and had them do their normal thing, but I laced the set with one of my original songs. And then I brought him over and said, Bruce, check this out. And they played the song. I'm like, that's my demo for your show. And he says, I love it! I love it! He's like, you're hired. And he hired me in the gallery to do the show, which became a syndicated, episodic sitcom that's running today all around the world. And it was my biggest show today. And I got it in the gallery.
And as Randy found out by happy accident, he whistled on the theme, and
Right.
SAG, is it SAG?
Yeah.
Considers that a performance by a voice actor, right? So he got paid both as a composer and as a voice actor.
Yeah, that was this job was the perfect bullseye of revenue streams for a composer. It was basically, I got paid as an actor twice in every episode because I whistled on the theme and whistled on the cues. So that's 2 SAG spots. Then they paid me per episode to score the show, and then it became syndicated, and BMI paid me royalties on every show, and then it was streamed, and then everything. So I hit on every molecule. It's been a nice show.
Are you, and I'm just hitting you this, you can obviously say no. Are you willing to give us any kind of idea of how much you've made from that? Like 6 figures, high 5 figures?
I mean, a big show like that, over the course of that amount of time, can be as many as 7 figures, actually. It's a pretty intense. The show, the SAG money that comes in is really funny because it comes in they don't know how to do direct deposit for some reason. So they pay you in each individualized, these envelopes that come in these mini checks. So I'll literally get my entire mailbox will be stuffed all the way full of checks, and I'll open them up and see super excited. It's like $3 for one check. And so I'm like, oh my God, opening these is going to cost me more in time than it will be to actually get like $300 in these checks. But it keeps coming, and I'm grateful every day I get a mailbox full of that.
Now you can pay someone to open it for you. Anthony, I want to talk about your current band. I want to talk about Creative Lights, but I want to back up a little bit. You know, Metro Station, you guys were on Columbia, so you had the major label deal. You had a hit, and you toured all over the world. Most of us are never ever going to have that experience. What is that like? Is it fun? Is it a pain in the ass? Did you guys make money? Did you ever recoup?
Well, all right. You want the real story?
Of course.
Let's just say, okay. If it was a normal band, yes, we would have made money. But the Cyruses are a special group of people. So we actually lost money because of the egos that were so big. You know, I mean, we played the O2 Arena with Miley. I think it was like 6 nights sold out. But you know, this is what 2008, 2009. The egos were just so big that they needed like the big tour buses and 5-star hotels and all that. So we ran through a lot of money. That's actually one of the reasons why I left the band. But with the new Creative Lights, I started this band with my best friend, and Seth manages us. And you know, we stay alive. Our revenue stream is, you know, syncs and commercials. The biggest is probably the Sochi Olympics, right, Seth? Yeah, our song Golden was there, and he sent a song of ours to Jeff Regan at Alt Nation, who back in 2014 was a big tastemaker, and still is today. And basically, that's kind of what started, you know, this band, and we've been alive ever since because we get a lot of commercials.
So talk about that. How, as a manager, how do you do that? Do you say, okay, you know what? I think this song might sound great in the Sochi Olympics, so I need to figure out how to
I can't even take credit for a lot of that. Anything you're doing with an artist, it usually takes a team of people. And for Parade of Lights, you sort of started with, you know, me finding an outlet for a song of theirs I thought was great, which happened to be satellite radio, which happened to be a channel that was very popular, which a lot of record label executives listen to. And when they hear a song on that channel that is not on a major label, they're like, what happened and how did this happen? And that's sort of how they got a record deal. But once that happened, then, you know, the band had the label, the band had a publisher, and a lot of the commercial work, a lot of the sync placements were, you know, sort of collaborations. You know, my efforts, some people the band knew. In that particular instance, with the Olympic spot, that was definitely Capitol Records. Somebody there in that sync department was like, this is a great song, I think it'd be great for the Olympics, I'm going to pitch NBC about it, and that's how it happened. And I think a lot of it is, when it comes to music, when you're trying to place it for anything, a television show, a movie, a commercial, a lot of it's timing and, you know, also the sound of the song. It's stuff that might work for a film or a television show or commercial, doesn't necessarily work for, you know, radio, doesn't necessarily mean the fans are going to think it's a great song ever. It just happens to fit that particular piece of film and the moment that they're trying to capture.
I want to continue with that, but so when I want people to kind of understand how this works. So did NBC license the song for a set amount of time, or
Yes.
do they have it in perpetuity?
No,
Do they have, like, how does that work?
It's all, every placement or sync license is typically for a certain period of time with options to renew that for additional money. In the case of something like the Olympics, you know, that's, you know, leading up to the Olympics themselves, you're going to talk about maybe a month worth of time. So the promos for a show, for an event like that, may just run prior to the event, may not run during the event. So a typical license for that sort of thing, maybe 2 weeks to a month, and they pay you a fee, and then the composers of the song will earn money from performance royalties after that. But those numbers aren't big. They're not like what Rainey was talking about for like, a comedy or drama. I mean, for something like that, relatively speaking, the numbers are low. Although they did have a song that E licensed for, the same song actually, for their promos for a month of award shows, Grammys, Oscars, SAG Awards. I don't remember what the other one was, but that, for that month of run, it generated like $40,000, and that was just because it was played so many times. So it can be pretty substantial even for a short period of time.
Right, and this isn't a song that you wrote specifically for that. It's kind of, it's like an evergreen.
And that song the song's called Golden, and it, kind of is an evergreen. And that song came out in 2014, and it is still being licensed today. Like it was licensed by Fox for MLS promos earlier this year. It was licensed by Fox for the MLB All-Star Game for this year. You can still hear it.
I saw that last night.
So yeah, sometimes you write a
You'd
song.
be like, okay, I'm getting paid.
It was vocal. It was really soft, but that was our sync. You just kind of catch it. I was at 7-Eleven, I think.
Yeah,
That's like 2 cents. Okay, cool.
Get the extra big Slurpee.
I mean, that song's been used by American Idol, it's been used by The Voice, it's been used by a apparel company in Australia. It just, it continues to get used, and it's probably, I don't know how much it's generated itself, but it's definitely several $100,000 for sure.
And then how does that work in terms of, Anthony, how much of that do you generally get to keep?
So, for example, we had this one sync in Germany. It was a BMW sync, and it was like $150,000. I think after the label gets their cut and everything, we netted or grossed like 70,000.
Yes, so if an artist has a record deal, what happens is they need to recoup expenses before they start earning royalties, and most artists signed to major labels in the early days don't recoup, and you typically don't recoup until, well, maybe never, actually, that's a different story. But in their case, although the money they've earned, you paid the label back for what they've spent on recording and marketing, the way the royalty structure is set up, they're still, quote unquote, unrecouped. Particularly the last thing we got was like $30,000 unrecouped. So all that 150 you talked about, 75 of it went to the label they don't see, the other 75 went to them, but they had a publisher at the time who took 30%, so then they get what's left, and then they got to cut guys like me in on commission, so that cuts their number down even more. So yeah, it doesn't end up getting anywhere near that full amount.
So you can't get the big gold.
No, I'm gonna work for Rainey here pretty soon.
Rainey, what is more, it sounds like just from the anger management story that the most profitable thing is to be a composer for a series that goes into syndication. Can you talk about why you would pick a movie over a series? Is a movie more prestigious but it pays less?
Yeah, absolutely. It's true. I think probably the highest revenue generating thing would be a network syndicated television show, just as far as the whole business is concerned. I mean, if you're a pop star and you're making, juggernaut hits, then that's the top of the top. I mean, I think the hierarchy in my mind goes like this. There's the artist, which is blowing it away. Like for me, it's like a Radiohead or something who's just completely broken the mold by doing exactly what they want to do that happen to be completely successful and make a ton of money. That's the top. Then there's artists, all the other ones that are doing well and doing their thing. Then there's composers who are making films on the top tier of the pyramid. Then there's composers making dramatic television. Then there's composers making comedy. Then there's composers making unscripted TV. Then there's composers doing straight catalog work. And then there's composers that are doing commercials and writing for catalog. That's kind of the tier. And so, yeah, I would do a film for the prestige of it, but it's arduous. An independent film can take up to a year and be a very, very low-paying gig, like $10,000 for a year's worth of work. I mean, the example that I set is absolutely the exception, and music is so arbitrary. It's such a bizarre thing. I've been paid the same amount. I've been paid $500 for the same type of piece of music that fetches $5,000 or $50,000 for that matter. It's so all over the map. And we do it for the love of it, you do it for the prestige of it, and you do it in every capacity because at the very ground level, there's, oh my God, I'm making money for playing music. There's that whole thing. And I fight with that. And that's why my agent comes in, because I'm like, I'll do it, I'm making money for playing music. And he's like, whoa, let's try to get you paid. And so there's that. But yeah, films are hard. They're really, really hard. And the scrutiny level is next to impossible, because every millisecond counts on film. And it can take a very long time for us.
You have obviously a handful of composers like John Williams, Hans Zimmer, who they probably are making $1 million a score. But that is really, there used to be a lot more making $1 million a score, and then it just kind of became not as, they were paying as much. And the funny thing to me is that all the rock stars want to be composers. I mean, you mentioned Radiohead. You've got someone like John Greenwood, who scored Phantom Thread, one of the absolute best scores of last year. But they all want to do, it's like everyone wants to be a rock star, and every rock star wants to be a composer. It's because it's prestigious. It's prestigious. Anthony, would you rather have a song in a FIFA game, so in an EA game, in a video game,
Okay.
or like you just had in 13 Reasons Why?
Yeah, definitely 13 Reasons Why. I mean, when we first heard, we were actually the first song placed on that soundtrack. And we just learned that through this girl Jenny at Capitol. And I mean, Echo and the Bunnymen, New Order, and Selena Gomez, One Republic, but it's such a cool and vibey, you can't buy that cred, and so we went from 5,000 streams a day, 5,000 to 8,000 streams on a lot of our songs to basically 70,000, and then we hit 2 million streams within a month, right?
And it was solely, you could really tell, because Netflix, I mean, obviously the whole series goes live. And
so you could Seth can actually talk more about the analytics behind that, and streams, what's more important, the save rate or the skip rate, or
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I mean, all the particular songs was in the season of the show, all the streams were generated directly from the show. It was pretty evident by looking at Spotify analytics, where people were hearing the song, because it was not on any other playlists. There was nothing outside of the show that would draw people to it. Now, eventually, once it got to a certain level, then it sort of, Spotify spreads it through its different algorithms to different playlists, like Discover Weeklies and release, well, I guess sometimes it'll be on Release Radar, but they'll put it on other smaller playlists, and then other people there maybe are not fans of the show discover it, but still the bulk of people, it's coming directly from a show like that. And I think when it comes to placing songs, there's two types of placements. There's the money ones, and there's the ones that are going to actually elevate you as an artist. The money, there's a lot of those. There's, like all the promos that song was in, they generate money, but they're not leading to people connecting the dots between, oh, this is a band. It could be a score. It could be, for all they know, it was a composer like Rainey that, wrote the song and scored it. They have no idea. But a show, a dramatic show that has the right audience, in the case of 13 Reasons Why, it's, older teenagers and young 20-somethings, mostly female, who are, very active when it comes to searching out new music. So something like that's going to connect the dots between, oh, this is a song by a band and I might want to discover or go see a show or maybe listen to some other music.
So how, as a manager, do you make sure when you find out that Parade of Lights is going to have a song and 13 Reasons Why, what do you make sure is all systems go? Like, do you go ahead and shoot a video because they're going to be looking for you on YouTube? Like, what do you do to make sure that you can exploit that to the absolute fullest for your band?
That is a very apropos question because, and I'm going to make sort of Yes, to answer your questions, I would have done a lot of things. Now, in this particular case, this is an interesting music business story because we're talking a lot about Capitol Records and the band is on. So this sync, they knew this was happening, people were excited. There was a bit of transition. The band was on one of Capitol's labels called Astroworks. In February, Capitol fired everybody from Astroworks and basically said, we don't know what's going to happen with the bands on the label. Cut to May, when the new staff took over, they said, well, you're going to be on Virgin now. Fine. So we meet with the head of Virgin, we have some meetings, we talk about the plan. The show debuts, the numbers come in, and 2 weeks ago they dropped the band. So the band is no longer signed to Capitol Records. So to answer your questions, all the stuff about video, what would we do? In the 2-3 weeks we were dealing with Virgin, there's a lot of things I wanted to do, including make a video. Now, this particular soundtrack was not a Capitol Records soundtrack, it's Interscope Records, which is in the Universal system where Capitol and Interscope live, but they're on opposite sides. They don't really like each other. So there's arguments about how the money was going to be split. So when it came down to it, Capitol's sort of response was, well, until we get the song back, which is in 6 months in November, we are not going to help promote this song. We are not going to try to get playlists. We are not going to make that video for you. And we're really not going to do anything. And then obviously they decided to drop the band. In the meantime, we were going to make a video anyway, so these guys went out last weekend and shot it, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And we're going to take it to Interscope and say, do you want to put this video out? And we'll see what they do with it. I mean, in an ideal world, you'd have a label that was supportive, that wanted to capitalize on the momentum that was built by something that they had nothing to do with. I mean, it just sort of generated itself, but we didn't have a label that was supportive, and in fact, they were going to let this thing die, and because it wasn't theirs wholly, and they didn't want to put any effort into it.
So when you say Capitol said we're not going to do anything with it because we don't have it for 6 months, Interscope has it for 6 months?
Interscope has it for 6 months.
That is, to me, that's like a tragic story. Because it just could just die on the vine when you really want to strike while the iron's
The
hot
thing
and
is,
throw in more of the shows.
it's reacting, like
Yes.
kids are cutting their own video to the shows that they love and, putting their own spin on it. And I tweeted this one girl, did you edit that? And she's like, yeah, and I said, what did you use? Oh, Final Cut Pro, and then I put it into After Effects, and I'm like, what? How old are you? Oh, I'm 19. These kids are really, really, we connected finally. And then we're getting 70,000 streams a day, but because we're caught in the system, we're not getting any love.
And I mean, maybe you want to cover this topic, but numbers like that, which to them is a big deal, is not a big deal to a major label. Right now, big deal to them is an independent artist, which is probably a rapper or some hip hop that puts a song on SoundCloud and has 100 million streams in a month, and then they can throw a bunch of money at it and sign it. But they don't want to do currently any work to develop artists. It's a bit of a cliche, but there's absolutely no artist development initiative, I should say. I mean, there are employees at labels that want to help artists and develop artists, but the mandate from on high is it's got to be a radio hit, or it's got to be doing something organically on its own to a level that all we have to do is send it to radio, and we don't have to do any work to get it there. So that's kind of what we deal with now with artists.
I want to talk about streaming. So as we know, the music industry is converting to a streaming economy and in many cases, it went straight from physical CDs